Welcome to the Jeremiah Patterson Show, and thank you for joining me today. Today is April 10th, and this is your TJPS Morning News Rundown. Starting immediately with Trump's tariff reversal, new reporting from the New York Times indicates how it went down. Quote, for the past week, President Trump has been urging calm in the face of the financial chaos that he created and resisting calls for him to rethink his approach. Quote, I know what the hell I'm doing, he told Republicans on Tuesday, as the massive tariffs he had imposed sent global markets into a tailspin. Be cool, he said in a social media post on Wednesday morning. Everything is going to work out well. At 9:37 a.m. Wednesday, the president was still BS on his policy, posting on Truth Social, quote, this is a great time to buy. But in the end, it was the markets that got him to reverse course. The economic turmoil, particularly a rapid rise in government bond yields, caused Mr. Trump to blink on Wednesday afternoon and pause his reciprocal tariffs for most countries for the next 90 days, according to four people with direct knowledge of the president's decision. Asked to explain the decision, Mr. Trump told reporters, well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid. A little bit is an understatement of actually what happened, but carry on, quote, behind the scenes, senior members of Mr. Trump's team had feared a financial panic that could spiral out of control and potentially devastate the economy. Treasury Secretary Scott Bennett and others on the president's team, including Vice President J.D. Vance, had been pushing for a more structured approach to the trade conflict that would focus on isolating China as the worst actor while still sending a broader message that Mr. Trump was serious about cracking down on trade imbalances. After his reversal on social media, Mr. Trump's team was put in the unviable position of trying to spin the media that this was the plan all along, a brilliant strategy straight out of the pages of the president's best-selling book, The Art of the Deal. Mr. Bessent went so far as to deny that the bond market had driven the change, end quote. Of course, it was the bond market that drove the change because per Trump's own words yesterday, he was watching Fox News and also the bond market when he made the decision to stop the tariffs. This was what he was watching on TV at the time.
How significant would you expect that? Do you personally expect a recession?
I am going to defer to my economists at this point, but I think probably that's a likely outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because markets, I mean, when you see a 2,000 point decline, it sort of feeds on itself, doesn't it? Because it makes you feel like you're losing money in your 401k, you're losing money in your pension.
So he heard the word recession and basically didn't want to be blamed for it, and now is maniacally being celebrated as a genius after he created this problem. And now the markets reacted in a way that was horrible, as this graph encapsulates. And basically he's now getting celebrated for fixing a problem that he created, even though he's the one that created the problem. You see, it's literally this back and forth ideology with Republicans and the way that they praise Trump in such a maniacal way that's extremely dumb. But, the markets are reacting positively now to this news, but Trump's own trade representative was caught off guard by this news yesterday. This was him in front of Congress yesterday defending Trump's tariffs and then finding out that he just issued a 90-day pause. Democratic Congressman Stephen Horsford asked a very serious question here on if this was market manipulation, especially considering that Trump encouraged people to buy right before announcing the pause. This was that exchange between Democratic Congressman Stephen Horsford and Donald Trump's trade representative.
What do you know about this pause? What are the details of it?
Well, the details, as I understand it, is that China continues to retaliate. Other countries didn't retaliate. The president 2 or 3 days ago said we wanted to negotiate with those countries that asked for meetings. That's what we're doing.
What are the details? How long is the pause? How many days? How many weeks?
I understand it's 90 days. I haven't spoken to the president since I've been in
So the
this
trade
hearing.
representative hasn't spoken to the president of the United States about a global reordering of trade.
Yes, I have.
And
I've just been in the hearing with you, sir.
But yet he announced it on a tweet. WTF? Who's in charge?
The president of the United States is in charge.
And what do you know about those details?
Well, as I mentioned...
it looks like your boss just pulled the rug out from under you and paused the tariffs, the taxes on the American people. There's no strategy. You just found out 3 seconds ago sitting here. We saw you.
I should also mention that Senator Elizabeth Warren on the floor of the U.S. Senate yesterday called for an investigation on if market manipulation was at play here. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez released this statement on the same lines, except directing it toward members of Congress. Quote, any member of Congress who purchased stocks in the last 48 hours should probably disclose that now. I've been hearing some interesting chatter on the floor. Disclosure deadline is May 15th. We're about to learn a few things. It's time to ban insider trading in Congress. Of course, this is in following with what happened and what was reported recently earlier this week by the New York Times, essentially how a Republican ran for Congress on banning insider trading in Congress, and now he's doing insider trading in Congress. Completely antithetical to everything that they preach, but once they get into office, it's something different. Democratic Senator Adam Schiff has now announced that there will be an investigation on whether insider trading happened here and has reached out to the White House with inquiries. And while there is a 90-day pause, there remains a 10% tariff on all over 70 nations included on that initial list, and a 125% tariff, of course, on China, who says that they are not, quote, afraid of provocations. According to economists, we are no longer on the brink, but a recession is still likely if this disastrously inconsistent behavior continues. This week, the House of Representatives is poised to vote on the SAVE Act, a bill that could strip the right to vote from millions of married women, people with passports, and would criminalize election officials who help ineligible voters to register. What this bill proposes basically is that if you are a married woman living in this country and you took your spouse's last name and that last name does not match your maiden's last name, basically on your birth certificate or on any information that is identifiable to you from birth, you will lose your right to vote. If you do not or cannot afford to own a passport, you will lose your right to vote. And if this were to pass and to be signed into law, which is highly likely under a Republican-controlled Congress and a Republican president, about 146 million Americans without passports would face voter registration barriers, and 42 states would have to dismantle their own voter registration systems. This was Democratic Representative Lori Trahan speaking about the bill yesterday on the floor in the House of Representatives.
We are witnessing yet another shameful attack on the fundamental rights of millions of Americans. House Republicans are forcing a vote this week on the so-called SAVE Act, a bill that does nothing to stop inflation from driving up grocery prices, nothing to end Donald Trump's trade war that is pummeling the stock market, and nothing to protect Americans' retirements. Instead, this is a messaging bill, sloppily written and dangerously flawed, designed to create confusion and chaos in our electoral system rather than strengthen it. The SAVE Act claims to prevent non-citizens from voting in federal elections. And at first glance, that may seem logical, if not for the fact that it is already illegal and has been for decades. Non-citizens caught voting in federal elections already face deportation and even jail time. Time and again, when pressed for evidence of widespread non-citizen voting, Republicans have failed to produce a single credible example. The reason? Because the problem they claim to be solving simply doesn't exist. So why are we here today? Why are we debating a bill that addresses a non-existent problem while hardworking American families are struggling with rising costs and economic insecurity? Because Republicans in Congress, they don't have real solutions. Rather than addressing the issues that matter, like lowering grocery costs and helping families get ahead, they are prioritizing a bill that disenfranchises millions of American women. Roughly 69 million women, about 25% of eligible voters in our country, have IDs that do not match their birth certificates, usually because they changed their name once they got married. Under this bill, if they don't have a passport, and half of Americans don't, they wouldn't be able to register to vote. Think about that. Tens of millions of women, the backbone of our families and our communities, stripped of their right to vote simply because they got married. Imagine a woman who has voted in every election since she turned 18, who pays her taxes, who contributes to her community. One day she learns that because her name changed when she got married, she is suddenly unable to register to vote in her state. No amount of documentation, no social security card, no marriage license, no previous voter registration will satisfy the requirements of this bill unless she possesses an updated passport or a birth certificate that matches her current name. This isn't just bureaucratic nonsense. It is an outrageous attack on the rights of women across our country. And the worst part, Madam Speaker, is that Republicans have known that this was an issue with this bill for years, and they've done nothing to fix it. They either don't care that millions of American women will be stripped of their right to vote, or that has been their goal all along. Either way, this is going to create chaos in every state in America, and it's going to make it harder for Americans to participate in their democracy. And it appears to be the latest in a long series of tactics like polling place closures and gerrymandering designed to silence voters that Republican politicians don't think they can win. That's not how democracy works. You don't get to silence millions of Americans just because they might not like your policies. You represent them too. So I urge my colleagues to reject this dangerous legislation and protect the rights of every eligible voter in the country, because our democracy is strongest when every voice is heard and every vote is counted. Thank you. I yield back.
Spread the word about this with as many people as possible. They are literally counting on you to be distracted and overstimulated by this news cycle that you do not notice, but they are actively trying to take away your right to vote. We covered here on the Jeremiah Patterson Show in an in-depth special report on what they're doing right now with elections in this country. I'm going to sort of put it right there in the card, so be sure to go watch that as soon as you can. It's a 35-minute report. I know it's long, but be sure to watch that on what they're doing to try to dismantle the way that elections are done in this country, the way that Trump is trying to now become the official overseer of all elections in this country, and trying to strip away essentially states in their power of how local elections are conducted. So be sure to watch that special report. In other news, the North Carolina Supreme Court has temporarily paused an order by the lower court of appeals in that state that essentially has sought to disenfranchise more than 65,000 voters. Of course, if you are an avid listener and watcher of the Jeremiah Patterson Show, you know that we've been following this story here closely for weeks and for months on the Jeremiah Patterson Show. Last year, Allison Riggs, the incumbent Democrat on the state Supreme Court, won re-election by 714 votes. Her opponent, Republican Jefferson Griffin, lost, and instead of accepting defeat, ordered multiple recounts, which reaffirmed Riggs's victory, and he is still trying to overturn the results of that election. This decision by the state Supreme Court is surprising given their prior inclination to rule in his favor, and it's also a setback in a months-long voter suppression effort orchestrated by Griffin and a Republican voter suppression group prior to the election. So once again, there's this major breaking news that the North Carolina State Supreme Court has temporarily paused an order by the lower court of appeals, essentially that sought to disenfranchise more than 65,000 voters here. And despite him trying to steal this election and invalidate tens of thousands of voters in the state of North Carolina, Justice Riggs remains persistent in this fight. And that is a story that is one that is continuously worth to cover and to continue to stay on, because if Republicans are successful in the state of North Carolina with overturning that state election, they are not going to stop there. That is going to become their playbook nationwide for how to essentially consolidate power and to steal state Supreme Court races and state elections, writ large. As a reporter puts it at Mother Jones, this is basically January 6th without the insurrection. They're trying to disenfranchise the rights of voters and to basically annul election results after that election has transpired. That's basically what's happening here. And that's something that everybody should be absolutely concerned about and frightened about. Residents of North Carolina are terrified that, effectively they could be disenfranchised now. I spoke exclusively with a reporter at ProPublica, Doug Clark, here on the Jeremiah Patterson Show to talk exactly about that and what's been happening there. This was some of that interview from earlier, and we covered it on a special report. In your reporting, there was this one piece that sort of struck me. It was about the people who are concerned about their votes being tossed out. And one of the residents in North Carolina said, today it's North Carolina, tomorrow it's a different state. This is something that's going to be part of sort of like a national effort in regard to voter suppression. In terms of this from a legal stance, are we more likely to see this happen across the country?
So this is a pretty unique situation, and I've talked to a lot of experts who said they don't really think that Griffin has a lot of legal basis here.
Mm.
But he has spent a lot of time, a lot of money trying to get it in front of his allies on the North Carolina Supreme Court, where whatever they say would be the final word for the state. It's possible this could be appealed in federal court, but it would be very hard to do so. And if this works, what's to stop other people in other states from trying something similar?
If you plan on traveling inside or outside of the United States, you have until May 7th to get a real ID. Otherwise, you will be denied entry onto aircrafts and also federal facilities. This is what the real IDs look like. If yours is identical to this with a star right there, you are real ID compliant. DMVs across the nation are filling up. Long lines and appointment overloads are causing a surge in multiple state systems as the rush to get as many people as possible their real IDs before the deadline hits. This policy is set to be implemented following an investigation by the 9/11 Commission back in 2005 after the terrorist attacks to ensure people really are who they say they are. According to TSA policy, if you are under the age of 18, you are not required to have a real ID. However, individual airlines will have their own policies, so be sure to check yours if you plan on flying anytime soon. Once again, the deadline to obtain and apply for your real ID is May 7th. The Department of Homeland Security already has this countdown on their websites, reaffirming that all states and territories of the United States will be real ID compliant. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Jeremiah Patterson Show this morning. Thank you for joining me. I will see you again this evening. Be sure to watch our TJPS special report on Signalgate, which was released last night. A huge thanks to all of you who supported the live premiere. We will be doing more of those because it was very fun to interact with some of you in the chat there. I always want to also say here that besides our evening show tonight, there will also be a TJPS special report on the attack on LGBTQ rights in the states right now. Republicans are doing everything they can to restrict minority voting rights, and the LGBTQ community is in the crosshairs here. I'll be joined exclusively here on the Jeremiah Patterson Show by Marcus Van Drill, a life and relationship coach and an LGBTQ advocate. You don't want to miss it. That's going to be tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. As always, please be sure to comment, subscribe, like, any suggestions, questions, or your thoughts on this video. If you're a fan of the Jeremiah Patterson Show, please be sure to recommend it to your family and friends. You can also support us by donating financially, as this is independent journalism and we rely on your donations to continue this crucial work. A huge and heartfelt thank you to all of you who support the Jeremiah Patterson Show and you've shared our videos. From the bottom of my heart, I'm eternally grateful for it. I've been doing this essentially since I was 13 years old. So back in middle school, I'm now 19 years old. Although technically I don't really acknowledge my age because I'm really eternally 10 and I don't have birthdays, but I have anniversaries to acknowledge the fact that I'm eternally 10. Anyways, I will end that tangent. If you are interested in resistance and fighting back, I wrote a book on it. It's called Resistance, a strategic guide on how to fight back, defend democracy, and avoid a Trump dictatorship. Be sure to check that out. If you're interested in purchasing it, there's the link right there. Your donations and your generosity do not go unnoticed. I'm eternally grateful for it all once again. Be sure to follow us on Blue Sky and Substack at TJPS News. If you have any questions, news topic request, or want to do a collaboration, you can email me tjpsnews@gmail.com. Once again, we're always interested in hearing stories from our subscribers. If something is happening in your state or your city or your town that you feel that we're not covering here on the show, or it's not getting attention in the national press, email us tjpsnews@gmail.com and we will cover it here on the Jeremiah Patterson Show. All right, that's going to do it. I hope you have a great day. It's a good morning. All right, take care. I will see you this evening.